and it deserves the attention of the Education Committee, because this is a policy position that government has played ping pong quite a number of occasions on. You remember, Mr. Speaker, that previously, I think around 2015, there was a directive that in the interest of saving taxpayers' money, and that school teachers were actually buying school books at exaggerated amounts. Therefore, the policy shifted to centralized procurement system, where they'd procure here at the national government and send them to the various schools. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, that policy appeared to be working initially. But a few years down the line, Kenya being what it is, and you know that we are a strange people with peculiar habits, very soon you found that schools, even without classrooms, Mr. Speaker, were being loaded with truckloads of books that they did not have, first of all, where to store, and even the teachers to teach some of the subjects, Mr. Speaker. But because it made a lot of sense, and you know Kenyans are never short of lofty words when they want to engineer a procurement project intended just for the sole intention of fleecing taxpayers' money. And therefore, that policy shifted back, I think, about 2018 or 2019, Mr. Speaker, and we saw, again, a decentralization. And teachers were allowed to buy and do this and the other. But after that, again, Mr. Speaker, we were presented with a report. And I remember I was in this house, Mr. Speaker, because this question is not the first time this has been asked. And we were told as a house that the reason why there was need to revert back to the old order is that you'd find that for the same textbook, one school in Kakamega buys for 500 Kenya shillings. The other school in Vihiga, just next door, buys it for 750 Kenya shillings. And therefore, a somewhat logical argument was presented and was said, then why not centralize? So, Mr. Speaker, the question should be, what have we learned from this attempted policy of centralizing and decentralizing the purchase of school books and materials, Mr. Speaker? And what measures have we put in place? In fact, and I hope, I think he has since left, I had seen the Senator for Muranga, who's our chairperson for education, but nonetheless, I know there are members of that committee who are in the House as we speak, and as members share their comments on this particular question, is that the question they need to ask the ministry when they eventually appear before the House to respond to this question is, what safety nets have they put in place out of the experience that they have learned? Because it is an incontrovertible fact, Mr. Speaker, that there are pros and cons to both centralizing and decentralizing. The only thing that we need to do, Mr. Speaker, if we are a country that learns and makes better decisions out of the experiences we've had, is to ensure that we have put the safety nets to ensure that whatever policy position we take on these items, be it to centralize or to decentralize, is to put in place the mitigation measures to ensure that taxpayers' money is protected. If you put it all procurement to be at Jogo House, then let the schools request so that you just don't dump them with books that they have not even asked for. There could be alumni that have donated, like I know for a fact in my county, Mr. Speaker, I organize a county-wide alumni day. And one of the things alumni always do is that they donate books in huge numbers to the schools that they went to. So you find that in some of these schools, they may not be needing the books that the national government do, that the school must first request for those particular books, Mr. Speaker. Second and most important is that if you choose to go the other way, should the ministry choose to let it be handled at the school level, Mr. Speaker, then at least provide a pricing list so that the schools are properly guided and know that there is no institution that is allowed to purchase Kiswahili Mufti, if that book still exists. At least that's the best that I can remember, Mr. Speaker. And no school is allowed to buy that book at above 450 Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. That way we will safeguard taxpayers' money. Otherwise, if we have just an argument, Mr. Speaker, whether to centralize or decentralize, then it means we have learned nothing as a people. And I don't think that is what Kenyans expect us as a house that does oversight. So work unto you, members of Education Committee, when Ministry of Education appears, and please pass those regulations here so that by the time this policy position is taken, we are well guided and hold the ministers to account. Then lastly, Mr. Speaker, is on these diplomatic relations between Kenya and the Kingdom of Morocco. Mr. Speaker, I will not get involved in the debate about what are the relations between Kenya and Morocco and what needs to be improved, what doesn't need to be improved. I know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that we have enjoyed good diplomatic relations with this country. It is only up until, I think, during the presidential inauguration that Sahrawi Republic, which is a breakaway from the Kingdom of Morocco, appeared and were formally recognized as part of the delegations that caused a tiff between us and them. That matter has since, to the best of my knowledge, been sufficiently addressed, because it's not Kenya alone that finds itself in this challenge between Morocco and Sahrawi. The rest of all countries of the world, because these people, each time when countries break away from the other, they provide a diplomatic challenge to established nations. Because on many accounts, when you want to disassociate, there are challenges with it. When you want to associate with them, therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'll leave it to the experts of foreign affairs to come and respond to the question by my friend Senator Eddie Okech. But I hold a different view from colleagues who are trying to demean the work of Dr. Sing'oei. While I may not agree with him entirely in the process with which he used to make a correction to a tweet that emanated from your office, Mr. Speaker, if I were in Dr. Sing'oei's position, the prudent thing to do, Mr. Speaker, would have been to reach out to your office and let you actually make the correction, because I know what he was trying to do is to give, of course, a formal complaint or informal may have reached him and said, is this the actual position of the government of Kenya? Because let's face it, Mr. Speaker, the same way people are saying your office is high-ranking in this republic, that's true. That's why when you send out a tweet, other countries are bound to question and say, is this the official government position of Kenya? Therefore, it was within his place to try and put the proper position, Mr. Speaker, on this particular issue. The mode which he may have chosen to execute it is what we can debate here. But I can tell you, Senator Godfrey Osotsi, my good friend, you cannot hold a candle to the PS Abraham Sing'oei on matters foreign relation. That gentleman has earned his space. Many of our colleagues, including some that I have served in this house with him, actually came up from his work from both foreign affairs and human rights, especially on marginalized communities. Celebrated, published, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, let us desist from this habit of being too critical of people. Surely, of all the work that Abraham Sing'oei has done, trying to restore Kenya's foreign relations that were dwindling at the time of the exit of the past regime, Mr. Speaker, to a point where now we are respected. People want to know Kenya's position on every matter. If we didn't matter as a country, then Somaliland will never have bothered to know or to confirm what is our actual position on this particular issue. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I hold the view that even as we hold to account the executive, let us do it with dignity. Let us do it with decorum. You know, a trend is being set in this house, Mr. Speaker, where sometimes because we have a premium platform, many of us tend to speak on issues without necessarily sometimes doing due diligence on a particular item. I saw, Mr. Speaker, for example, early this week, members speak on the issue of privatization and say, oh, I'm opposed to this or the other. I hold the view, Mr. Speaker, that particular notice is a notice of public participation. You're being invited to give your views on a policy position that the government wants to take. We are here as a house debating and saying we cannot even pay salaries to our staff because we are in a difficult financial position. When the government tries to come up with policies that will free up the fiscal space, we are again the first ones to oppose and say, no, that one is not possible. This one cannot be done. I think you cannot eat your cake and have it. We've got to be sincere and appreciate that as a country, we have found ourselves in a very unique situation in terms of our fiscal space. We can hold debate this way or the other and say, in fact, Mr. Speaker, I would be more encouraged if as colleagues, senators, we will take a lead role, for example, in this conversation on privatization. Senator Boni Halwale and, for example, those that come from the sugar-growing areas, we want to hear your views on this particular matter because it is not sustainable, for example, for government, Mr. Speaker, to each year be pumping 500 million Kenya shillings to sugar mills that, first of all, half the year do not function, they don't pay farmers, they consume taxpayers' money. Let us inform this particular debate and say, for example, I'd wish and appreciate and say, if there's a private sugar mill in my factory, I'd wish that concession fee, instead of being paid to the national government because they don't need it, let it be paid to the resident county government. It can be used at least to show up, pay for medical services and whatever functions and funds that people need. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage colleagues that many other times when we take positions on the floor of this House, let it be better informed than at least the people that we represent. Because people cannot look at you, Senator Sifuna, and say, of all of us here in Nairobi, you are the best representatives in the Senate. Then you come to the House and want to speak also like the average Nairobian who is expecting on you to have better information than them. We have to do better as a people and as a leadership. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to support these particular two statements and hope that our colleagues will get justice for the statements that they have sought and answers that are sufficient for the people that they represent. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Eddie.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think that there are two statements that have been put across here by esteemed